Welcome everyone to the ISM Rochester Lunch and Learn webinar series. Our speaker for today is Jane Tierney, who will be speaking on Lean Six Sigma for supply chains, as everybody can see from the slide up in front of you. Please be sure to ask any questions by using the chat or the Q&A function. Jane will definitely be answering questions throughout the program, so please be sure to put your question or any comments that you may have for her. We will be recording this particular program, and we will be sending out the recording and your educational credit later on today. Now on to the presentation. Jane has been is a return speaker. She is the founder of our company Purple Link, sharing with clients a better way to obtain value through the supply chain. She is an engineer, has an MBA, a Green Belt, CPSM, and CPSD certifications. In addition to running her business, she teaches operations and supply chain management courses in the California State University system and serves on the advisory board for the operations and supply chain management. 4 years ago, she co-founded the Southern California Council for Local Executives focused on supply chain risk management, which hosts an annual supply chain risk symposium. Jane is a speaker and author, and she offers her monthly dynamic dialogue webinars and conducts workshops on a number of topics. At this point, I'm going to turn the program over to you, Jane.
Thank you, Kathy, and thank you, New York ISM chapters, for having me today. It's great to be back with you guys. I haven't seen you for a while, so it's good to see everyone there, and I'm hoping that you're having good weather. I'm here in Los Angeles as usual, and our weather's pretty good, so we hate to brag about that or whatever, but it's pretty nice here today. Hope you're all having a nice spring. So I'm going to talk to you about Lean and Six Sigma and show you how these ideas can be utilized in your business and in your life, because these are really great concepts to use with your own personal life as well as your business life. So sorry, this is a little blurry, but I always like a good Dilbert cartoon. And if you can't read this one, this is the dreaded manager. And he says, I just read this great book about how to lean our business processes. And poor old Dilbert says, uh-oh. The manager, everybody's doing it. We'd better jump under the bandwagon before the train leaves the station. I'm putting you in charge. And Dilbert sighs. And then the manager says, if you need any management support, you know where to go. And Dilbert does his grumbling. So we see this a lot of times. These kinds of initiatives get launched, get tried out in a business, and management hands them over and says, okay, we're going to be this today. And I've seen a few businesses that say, we're going to be lean. So here's a book, here's what we're going to do. We're going to all be lean. And that's great, except it takes a little bit more than that. So what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about why a company should bother with yet another initiative. Well, we're going to talk about what Lean and Six Sigma really are. And I'm going to show you how you can start with the 5 S's, which are a pretty straightforward thing to do. We're going to talk about Six Sigma programs and projects, some metrics, because all of this needs metrics, and then I'll have a quick raffle and prizes. So I give out a prize, as many of you know. I do an Amazon gift certificate, and if you want to do that at the end, you can send me an email right now to Jane@Purple Link. Oh, that says IASQ in it, so it shouldn't just put ISM in it. In the subject line. That's all you have to do. You don't have to put anything in the body of it, just an email to that address. And maybe, Kathy, you could put that into the chat so people have that. And just put ISM in there to get into the drawing. You need to be here at the end, and then you'll get some prizes. And then I'll use my handy little random number generator on my phone, which is such a cool little feature, and pick one lucky person. So let's jump right into the lean. So why should you bother with a lean concept? Why should you bother with an initiative, yet another one, like I say, to try to lean out your business, your company, your area, even your desk. As Kathy said, I teach some courses at the local California State University at Northridge. And it's finals week. And if you could see my office, you would probably gasp because I have piles of paper everywhere. I have exams, I have papers, I have this, I have my books, trying to get the end of the semester wrapped up and final grades, finals done. I have more finals to give on Thursday, get the grades recorded, and then get everything filed away for next semester. So that's my project for the weekend, is to get the grades submitted. And so my desk is a mess, but next week it's going to get cleaned up and I'm going to go back and get my whole office organized again, because we all need to do these things. Companies want and need improvements to their processes, to their procedures, and really all of that is designed to get improvements to their results. So that phrase of faster, better, cheaper that we've all heard and used probably, that really still applies, and that's what companies are looking for. Companies are looking for ways to get faster time to market, better and faster product development, time to implement changes and upgrades and things that they're doing. They want that time to be shorter, and they also want it to use fewer resources, so to be more efficient. We need better quality, better technology. For supply chain, the words that people throw around all the time, and I'm not sure they all understand them: flexibility, agility, responsiveness, increased customer satisfaction. And, every term, every word that you can think of, more value add that your business is using. And then they are looking for better ROI, return on investment, return on assets, ROA, inventory turns, financial results. So all of these things with lower prices, less direct and indirect costs, less material, less people, less all of these things. So we're trying to do more with less and less and less. So what I want to do is give you some tools to track the progress, looking at how we can get better, and do the things that we need to do for all of these reasons, so that we can simplify our processes, improve the things we need to do, increase the speed, and at least be cognizant of that. So maybe even start to measure that as step one. Sometimes that's a good thing to do. Minimize our inventory, and then make sure our processes are robust. So companies need that. We all need that. I say that, and then I think, how am I going to not get into this mess next semester? Because that's what happens. We sometimes regress and get back into our old habits. So what we want to talk about is how we can do that. So Lean and Six Sigma are not new concepts. These are not unique to the United States. And actually, these are concepts that weren't really created by, but they were included in the Toyota production system way back when the Taiichi Ohno was one of the co-authors of the Toyota production system. So it was focused a lot on automobile manufacturing. And his version of why they did this is interesting, because it doesn't really have to do with quality, and it doesn't really have to do with saving money, even though those things are pretty important in the whole scheme of things. He says all we're trying to do is shorten the timeline from order receipt to collecting cash for the goods or services provided. So it was a financially driven approach, but really there's a lot more that goes into it to facilitate that. And there's a lot of reasons that you and other people attend these kinds of webinars. These topics are broad, they're deep. There's a lot of things you can do. You can take whole courses in this. You can go after certifications. You can become a white belt, yellow belt. Those are more internal kinds of certifications. You can get green belts and black belts that are recognized around the globe from many, many different sources. And what I'm going to do with this is just hit a few highlights and give you a little history of why this is, because it is from the Toyota production system. But if you don't know today, these Lean and Six Sigma concepts are applied all over the manufacturing and even in services. So these are not by any stretch limited to car manufacturing or automobile manufacturing. So let's take a little more history lesson on this. So the lean really is about eliminating the waste. It's really about finding that waste in all shapes and forms. We're going to look at subject matter experts, SME. So it's really about not finding the smartest engineer, not getting the supervisor, but getting the people who actually do the work, the subject matter experts. Sometimes that may include an engineer, a design engineer, a manufacturing engineer, a production supervisor, but it also probably includes people that are actually doing the work, actually making the parts, making the goods, and delivering the services, because we want them to bring their expertise and their knowledge and their firsthand experience on these processes, and in order to help identify the waste and identify better ways to do things. So we're looking at material, we're looking at time. Ultimately, we want a nice, smooth flow of material and services. In my classes, I say I would like nice, smooth. In operations, what we try to do is create a nice, smooth flow of supply to meet the demand. That's what we're trying to do. That's where we want to focus that. And Six Sigma is about reducing the variation within the process. So once we find the waste and can eliminate that or reduce that, then we want to reduce the variation or the results or the in-process variation that we have. So Six Sigma is highly statistically based. It's talking about reducing overall defects. It's about the process capability. So is that process one that can be done on a repetitive basis to the point that you would yield 3.4 defects per million opportunity. So if you use that process a million times, you would only have 3.4 defects showing up in your results. So it's really about reducing the variation. Now, that is overwhelming sometimes when you talk about only 3.4 defects per million or per million opportunity. And not everything requires that, but it's good to have that as a goal and a target and figure out how you would approach that to try to reduce the defects to almost nothing. So 0 defects is another way to look at that and target that. But statistically speaking, and the calculations are that Six Sigma should represent only 3.4 defects per million opportunity. So one is statistically based, one is not. Lean is very much more process oriented, more focused on a consistent approach, a way to conduct your work, and a way to review and make sure that you are putting together some things that are sustainable. So there's a lot of different things in there. So let's start with lean, where we find and remove the waste. There's some Japanese terms because, again, this came from the Toyota production system. So the Toyota production system says that we look at this in terms of waste. So the first word that we have here is in Japanese is muda. So we look for the waste. Then some other terms that have come out of that, and many of these terms are now very common in U.S. manufacturing areas, in plants, in factories across the globe, not just in Japan, not just in the United States, but these words are used across the globe because they have evolved from that Toyota production system, which is not new by any stretch, but it is still embraced and utilized by many, many manufacturing companies for many different industries. So muda is waste. The next one there is kaizen, which is a change for good or continuous improvement. Kaizen is used a lot of different ways. It's used as an initiative that we are going to do this and try to get a kaizen improvement, so continuous improvement. It's used as a culture or as a philosophy of continuous improvement. It's also used as an activity that's usually very quick and very focused in an area to train to identify improvement. So if many companies employ a Kaizen process, which involves the subject matter experts, not much time, excuse me, maybe a day, maybe even just part of a day, where you get together, you evaluate the process or a portion of a process. You really look for the waste to identify that and figure out how you can remove it, what you can do, what you can change, what you can do differently, and then identify that, do the work that you need to do to change it. Sometimes you may need to order a tool or an enhancement of some kind, maybe a shelf or something else, and that might take a little bit of time, but oftentimes it doesn't take anything. It's just a rearranging, it's just a sorting, and you use the tools that you have available to do shadow boards, to rearrange the workspace. And then it's done. And then you take a little bit of time and you monitor to say, did the change made have any effect, and did they have the desired effect? And if so, then you move to institutionalize those or make those permanent. And then you also look for other areas. If this worked here, can we apply that to another workstation or another part of the factory or part of the office? So can we do those things? So Kaizen has broad meanings. Kanbans is a pretty common term. This is a signal. It's often a card, a piece of plastic or a laminated sheet that has some words on it. It indicates that work needs to be moved. Either we're running out of work and we need more work in this area, or we need to refill something, or this is completed and needs to be moved to the next area. So the Kanban is a signal. Poke-yoke, everybody laughs at this term, but this means error proofing. So error proofing says once we find a defect and we find an area that was where someone was able to do something incorrectly, or made a mistake, didn't do it completely, then we are going to error proof that. So some common uses of poka-yoke are things like circuit breakers. So there's an error proof thing where it doesn't do a lot of damage. It blows your circuit. You go back, you flip the switches, you go back and you have your electricity back. Not like the olden days of fuses where they blew and you had to replace them, or complete damage. The outlets in bathrooms are error proof. One of my favorite examples is the ATM machine. And the one I happen to use, you put your card in, then you put your code in, you ask it if you have any money and how much money you would like to take out. And when you do that, it gives you your card back. It doesn't give you any money until you remove the card from the slot. So if you know anybody or you've been a person who left their ATM card in the machine before, the machine that I use most frequently won't let you do that, because you can't even it doesn't even dispense the money until you remove the card. So once you have the card in your hand, then that little slot opens up and says, here's your cash. So those are error-proof things. Seatbelt warnings are like that. So there's a lot of things that we have in life that are like that, and things that we do in a factory to identify top and bottom, put different colors on things, put stickers, make things so that they don't fit in an down condition, so that you can't put something together backwards. So different things like that. Muri is to overburden, and that can be applied to people or machines. Mura is an inconsistency. So it's done one way, one place, and something different, a different process in a different area where they should maybe be the same. Gemba and Gemba walk is a good term, and that's just walking around and actually kind of kicking the tires and seeing what's going on. Early in my career, when I was a manufacturing engineer, there a senior manager who would come in every morning. He would come down and walk the factory. This is before I ever heard the term Gemba walk, but he always did that. And when we worked Saturdays, which was often, he would come in on Saturdays and just kind of walk around and spend a few minutes, talk to a couple of people, just to see how things were going and to check in with the people, check in with the supervisors, and let them know that he was interested. He knew they were working. He would thank them for working on the weekends and do that kind of thing. So the Gemba is often used with Gemba walk, which means just making sure that you know what's going on in a factory. In my career throughout it, too many people have avoided going out to see where the action is in the factory. And as supply chain professionals, sometimes we get really bogged down with the things on our computer, the phone calls we have to make, the meetings we have to go to. And we forget that right outside our office, oftentimes, or down the hall, or through that set of doors, is the factory that we're supporting and that we really need to know what's going on there. So the Gemba walk is a good term. The Genchi Gembetsu, and I'm sorry if anyone speaks Japanese way better than I do. I apologize, I have no Japanese accent. But this says the Gembutsu is to go see for yourself. So that's check it out, get your own eyes on it. And Obeya is a room or an arena. It's often like a war room. So when you have a crunch time or you have a big issue or a big project, oftentimes we use a war room. We talk about dedicating a conference room where we put things on the wall, on the whiteboards, whatever. And we have that room reserved for those deep discussions, those activities. And that's the idea of the Obeya. It's an arena for these discussions. So there's a little cheat sheet of Japanese terms for you. So when we start with lean, I always say start with the 5 S's. So these are 5 Japanese words that I can never remember. So we have translated them sort of into English words with 5 S's that people can tend to remember a little more easily. These are the steps, and this is the order they should be utilized. And so this is a simple way to do this. This is a great thing to do. And if you don't think this works, you can try this out at home. This is also analogous to Marie Kondo, if any of you know Marie Kondo. She wrote the book, The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up, a few years ago. She has, I believe, a Netflix podcast or a Netflix show. She's done some different things. She's pretty well known for this. And her whole philosophy is to declutter everything and only keep the things that bring you joy. Now, there are people that say she goes way too far, and perhaps she does for you, but I think the basic idea can be applied to a lot of things. One of the things I love that what she says about the home, and one of her phrases is keep the things that bring you joy. So when you, or things that you use. So with your closet, go in and be brutal with your closet, which is a project I have for the summer, to go in and get rid of the clothes that I no longer wear, that no longer fit, that no longer are in style, that I just keep thinking, well, maybe I'll be able to get back into that, or maybe I will wear that, whatever. Now, that doesn't mean get rid of that for women, like a wedding dress, or for men, that suit that you need to wear to weddings and funerals, even if you only wear it a couple times a year. So it says if you need those things, you can do that for men. And for women, if that's your wedding dress and something that you treasure and that you love, you don't need to get rid of that. One of the things I have is I have a couple of pieces in my kitchen, serving pieces that I use rarely, but that came from my great grandmother in one case, and from an aunt that I was close to. And so I don't use them very often. They're glass. You have to be very careful with them. You can't put them in the dishwasher, but those things that I use seldom, but that are meaningful to me because they came from someone that I was very close to. So you can keep those. And in 5S, you kind of do the same thing, which means you sort things out as the first step. So you reduce the clutter, you identify things that are non-essential. At the same time, you identify what is essential. And you say, these are the things I use all the time. So think about this in a kitchen situation or at your desk. What are the things that I use all the time, every day almost, like your computer? You use your computer all the time. You don't need to put your computer away. You can shut it down at the end of the day, leave it in place because you use it all the time. For kitchen pots, certain pots and pans, maybe a tea kettle that you use every day, or your coffee pot, your coffee maker. If you actually make coffee at home and you have that coffee maker, if you use it every day, then it should be somewhere where you can access it, and you shouldn't necessarily put it away where you have to dig it out every morning. That hinders you from wanting to use it. And if you would rather drink tea than coffee or do something different, then you want to make that as easy to do as possible. So the idea is that you sort things into essential, and then the things that you need occasionally, and then the things that you just really do not need. If you do not need them, then you need to say, okay, we either get rid of them or put them in storage where if we need them, they're available. And generally, the idea is if you really don't need them, get rid of them. Get them out of the space that you have. Get them out of the line of sight, and keep them in your storage area if you don't need them and you haven't used them in a year, especially if they're easily replaced. So my friend said that they had a pizza cutter and they did not eat pizza. They had gone to the low carb or no carb type thing. They didn't eat pizza. They no longer had children in the house that were ordering pizza, and they got rid of their pizza cutter. So we were there one day for dinner and uh, had something. It wasn't pizza. And someone said, well, don't you have a pizza cutter? That would be the easiest thing to do that with. And they said, no, we got rid of it. Okay, that they got rid of it. So we had to figure out a better way to do that, or an alternate way to do that, because they didn't have the pizza cutter. So it wasn't the end of the world. It wasn't a big deal. We had other things that cut, and we managed to cut that food and eat it. And our friends no longer had the pizza cutter. So you need to get rid of the things that you're really not using and look for alternate ways to do things. And the idea that is the same in the workplace. Again, what do you use every day or at least 3 times a week kind of thing? What do you use very frequently that is essential to help you do this job? What are the things that you need occasionally that still are essential to helping you complete a job? And then what are the things you no longer need? So once you identify those, you get those put into those sorted categories. Then you go on to the second step, which is straighten. So, or set in order. So the idea there is once the clutter is gone, then you want to establish locations for the things that you're going to need and start putting them in the right order, in the right place, so that you know where it needs to be on a permanent basis. So organize your desk so that your desk is here, your mouse is here, that you've got space next to that to maybe open a book or put some papers that you're doing some research on. If you're a note taker like me, I have a place to the right because I'm very right-handed where I can put my notebook and my note paper because I do take notes the old-fashioned way. I write things down on a piece of paper, and I have my notepad and my pages that I use, which are this kind of size. This one is actually, so I use smaller paper, and I have pens right in front of me. And I also have sticky notes because I like to put sticky notes on things, and I use them quite frequently. So I have those at the ready, and I have a couple of different sizes so that I can make a note to myself, or I can put a note on something that I'm working on, or maybe on a paper that I graded or whatever. So look at the things that you need and mark those or put those in the general area of where they're going to be needed. If it's in a factory, you know, what tools do you need first? Do you need a screwdriver? And can you hang that screwdriver, get an electric one that's hanging in front of you so you can just grab it and use it and then let it go back? Or scissors or tape or whatever the item is that you need. So once that clutter's gone, get the space there. So my grandmother used to say, a place for everything, everything in its place. And so my life doesn't look like that, but my brain thinks like that, which is means I constantly strive to do better. And then we look at cleaning. So a lot of people say, why don't we clean first? And the idea here is that once you've sorted things into their categories of what's essential, what's not, and identified things that you can remove or get rid of, once you've figured out what it's going to look like, then you want to clean everything underneath that. So then you do your deep clean and you leave your essential items there. So you make sure that when you clean everything, then what happens is the non-conformities, the non-essential things become more obvious. And you can identify things like in the factory, like oil spills, paint drips, off-fall from an operation. Maybe at your desk, you're looking at unused sticky notes or things that are not working well, paper clips, things like that, that sometimes just get scattered on your desk, or staples that aren't that don't work, that you've removed and they end up there. So you clean all that away, and then you go back and standardize. So the fourth is to standardize. We're trying to really look at this and make things put things in an area where we can have this common approach. We standardize things, we make it obvious of what we're trying to do. So we really look at that to use things like shadow boards. This is where you'll see tape on desktops, outlines of tape and scissors, and maybe another tool, a screwdriver or something that you use occasionally. So when you use it, it goes back here, and the tape is going to be hung in this place. So pegboards with identification of things in the factory are a good idea. Any of that kind of thing that says this is where this belongs, so you don't say, where did you put that tape? Okay, when you're finished with the tape, you hang it back in this area, or you put it in this part of the workstation, so that you know where it is every time. And so if the shadow boards are a great idea, I should put a picture of a shadow board in here because I get questions on that a lot of times. And understand where things are so that you have a place for things to go. So you cleaned out that. And then finally, you need to be able to sustain this. So the last S for the 5 S's is to sustain, which means, how are we going to do this over and over and over again? How can we continue this and keep this vigilant application of these principles? So this one often is the most difficult. And if you have a junk drawer at home, if you have a closet that needs to be cleaned out, if you have a garage that you have to do, and if you've ever spent, the couple hours on the junk drawer, or an afternoon or in your closet, or a day in your garage, cleaning out, thinning out, organizing, getting it all back clean and nice. And then 3 months later, you happen to be in that space and you say, what the heck happened? I had this all cleaned out, all neat, all whatever, and it's back to being cluttered and a mess. So then you ignored this last step of sustaining to maintain and continuously improve that area. For whatever reasons, we all do it, it happens, but this is an area where you really want to put some thought into, how can I sustain this? How can I maintain this neat order? And what are the things that I need to do in order to keep that going? So today, those are the 5 S's. Today, we're seeing some companies add in safety as a 6th S. Now, safety for me is kind of job one, because I worked in and around factories for most of my career. So I have never felt the need to add that to the 5 S's. But if you do, feel free to add that. I don't know if there's a Japanese word that means S, or that starts with S, that implies safety, but it's not a bad thing to include, because it's always very, very important to make sure things are safe for the workers and an occasional visitor so that no one gets hurt accidentally. So that could be the sixth S if you're inclined to do that. Main values are pretty straightforward. We look at things from a customer perspective. We look at the voice of the customer. We say, if I was a customer, if I was buying this, what would I want? What would I need? What would I think of this if I just bought this? One of the activities that's done in a lot of factories is the out-of-box audit. So OOBA or UBA. So you make 600 of these and you pull out 3 and you say, okay, now I'm going to open these as if I was a customer, and then I'm going to judge what I see and how I see it. So I know what it's supposed to look like, and does it look like that? So sometimes you find that, oh, we didn't put the instruction sheet in the right area, or it's too difficult to get out of the box without tearing something, or whatever the issue is. So you actually do that exercise. That's one way to do that. There's lots and lots of different ways to look at it from the customer perspective, but out-of-box audit is a good way. Another way to say it is to become the patient. So walk through that entire value stream and say, what happens next? How did we get here? What are we doing here? I just spent some time in hospitals and around a lot of doctors with my husband, who's been going through some health issues, and looking at things through his eyes as I was helping and supporting and there to kind of run interference for him with different things. What was was eye-opening. So we're not usually, my husband and I are not in and around hospitals. Neither one of us is in the healthcare profession or whatever. And it's interesting to take that journey and see what it looks like from the eyes of a patient when when you have that opportunity. So do that throughout the value stream and really do an evaluation of, how does this feel? How did we get here? How do we know what happens next? Does this make sense? Is this smooth? Again, this nice smooth flow, or is this choppy and we're sitting around waiting and whatever? So one of the things to do is 5 M's and 1 E. So I learned this as an industrial engineer a long time ago. You look at it in terms of the 5 M's, the men, the people involved, the material, the machine, and the method. So you look at the processes, which are the methods, any of the equipment, the tools, any of the things like that that you use that fall under machine, any of the materials you use, whether they're direct materials, indirect materials, packaging materials, support materials, and then the people aspect of it. So the 5 M's just helps you remember man, material, machine, method, and then the metric, the measurement or the metric is the 5th one of that. And then the E is in the environment that it's in. So it might make sense in one environment and not in another. So you want to put that in context and make sure you're looking at that and understand what is supposed to happen, and is what's supposed to happen actually happening, so you're making the best decisions and you're using the best process. Excuse me. Another lean value is cross-functional teams. Teams in general, but cross-functional teams are an important part. Excuse me, I have a little bit of a cold or some allergies. So you want to use those cross-functional teams because you want to get those different perspectives. You don't want to look at it one-dimensionally or say, this is the way we've always done it, so it's the best way, we can't do anything different, because that's probably not correct. There is probably more than one way to do that, and you want to look for the best of the best. So use cross-functional teams because they look at it from different ideas, different perspectives, different needs, different different places to come from that say this is going to work or not. So you might get a financial person, a quality person, a shop person, a production person, an engineer, a purchasing person, maybe a logistics person. Logistics people can find things that the rest of us don't. What do you mean you're going to do that? That doesn't make it. Or, I can only get this many of those in a truck, and I'd really like to get more in the truck. So if we do this and this and this, or we can't stack it like that. If you don't do this, then we can stack it and get more in the truck or whatever. So it's good to get those different perspectives. Financial people always bring the financial aspect of that. Quality is always looking at that. Engineering is always trying to re-engineer it. So all of these things are very good, and you really get more powerful and better solutions when you have cross-functional teams. So that's a primary value of lean. There are 8 wastes, and these are important to remember. This, when you don't know where the waste is, go back to this. Anything that's a defect. So that's the first one. Defective parts, any of that. Not just bad products, but poor or missing documentation, no controls, no metrics, improperly balanced tools and machinery, incorrect inventory balances, anything like that can be considered a defect. So you're looking for those. Excess processing and overproduction are often closely linked. Excess processing just says, if we have a poorly designed process, we might have things like lack of communication. We might have redundancies in duplication of data or paperwork requirements, incorrect tools or too many tools that we have, poor layouts, misused equipment. Overproduction says that we're producing more than we need. In lean, the optimal lot size is 1, but a single item produced over and above the actual demand is also considered overproduction. So they're not the things that you need if you have that, but just saying, oh, our lot size is 100 when we often don't need but 40, 60, 70 of those, but we make them in lots of 100 because it's easier for us. Is that really correct? So if you're making things that you don't know that you can sell or have a high probability, then that's probably overproducing. So standard lot sizes may not be lean, even though production managers like to say, oh, that's more efficient that way. Our batch sizes are whatever. And what happens sometimes is if you have this batch size, it can mask defects that sometimes would be more apparent if you were actually making the quantity that you needed. So if you say we need 98, well, we'll just make 100. Well, then if we lose 1 or 2, we won't even notice because we only needed the 98. And at the end of the day, guess what? We have the 98 to fulfill the order. So we lost 2. We had scrap and rework, which are waste. And so if we'd started with the 98 and didn't finish with that, then we would say, hey, we had a problem here. Let's go look at this and figure out why we weren't able to produce all of those that we wanted to. So again, these are ideal things to do, but if you look at this from this perspective, then you get a better understanding. Waiting and wait times. Again, I'll go back to not the planned wait, to let the baked goods cool or the paint dry or things like that, or even the small queues that you set up to keep things running smoothly in the factory. But if you have wait time that relates to labor, time, materials, starting the job versus this nice steady flow of things, that's a wait, an unnecessary wait. I've been going to the doctor, like I said, with my husband, and you expect to wait at the doctor, but sometimes it becomes very excessive. Like if you have a 10 o'clock appointment, you don't arrive at 10 o'clock and you don't get seen at 10 o'clock either. But you should be seen by 10:15 or maybe 10:20. If you get there 10 minutes early and then you have to wait another hour just for your 10 o'clock appointment and you're not in there till after 11, that gets very frustrating. And those excessive wait times are what we're trying to minimize. And that, again, can apply in the service area very frequently. Inventory. So we need inventory. And as an operations person, inventory is, a necessity, and we don't make things unless we have raw materials, but we want to look at how much we're holding, how much we're handling. It encompasses receiving, transactions in and out of the warehouse, all of the security, insurance, the floor space we have for inventory, all of those things. If we can reduce that, that's a good thing. Financially, finance people don't like inventory. They'd rather have cash. And those are the 2 big things on the balance sheet. There's accounts payable in there as well. But the bigger numbers are inventory and cash, and cash is king, right? So we want to reduce the inventory as it makes sense. That doesn't mean, though, that if we have lead times that are sometimes we're seeing today 26 weeks, 30 weeks, 60-week lead times I've seen, then if you need the inventory, you need the inventory, but you have to take care about expiration dates and things like that as well. So excess movement or transportation that's in the factory, in and out of the factory, going back and forth, maybe for outside processing. If it's necessary, okay, but if we're moving it excessively, or if we can reduce the quantity, the number, the distance, that's a good thing. The motion of people, materials, equipment, all of that. And then one of the biggest wastes is underused talent. This is a really important one. So if you have people that in your workplace that are not able to use their talents or able to expand their areas of contribution and reach their full potential, then you probably will lose some of them. So try to figure out how you can use that talent and let them be bigger contributors. The lean principles, then we look for value, value add, all of those things. Value stream mapping, which is just flow charting, but it's really about mapping the process steps, identifying the value, and identifying the non-value add steps. So is that inspection necessary? How many defects are we finding there? How far do we have to move? How have to delay production for that test result? Can we do things about that? The flow, the bottlenecks, we're looking for interruptions, disruptions, all of those things. We want to use pull systems versus push systems, which means we're responding to demand signals and we're not just making things blindly and pushing that out into the market. And we're always striving for perfection. So when we have lean systems, we are accountable. We have managers that lead by example. We're able to adapt. We're able to communicate candidly. And we have a balance between the strategic and the tactical things that we do. So that's the lean. And I spent most of my time on that because I think that's easier to implement. Six Sigma is very important, and I'm going to show you a few things pretty quickly here. So again, 3.4 defects per million. We're looking at a normal distribution, which is that bell curve, if you remember, and from school days. And we're looking at a data-driven approach to eliminate the waste, identify the defects, make these process improvements, and ultimately reduce the variation. So we use this DMAIC model: define, measure, analyze, not implement, but improve, and then finally control. So what we want to do is to spend a lot of time defining the real problem. So we want to get to the root cause, the heart of what was wrong, not jumping to solutions and not even jumping in to start measuring things. We want to really talk about that. This is one of the hardest things when I've facilitated this in the workplace, is to get people to really spend time on defining, oh, we know what's wrong. This is broken, or this doesn't produce good parts, or we have too many defects here. Okay, but we really want to dig into that and look at things so we can identify that properly and comprehensively so that we'll get a better solution and a better improvement outcome for that. So then we measure, we analyze, then we do the improvement, and then we control it to see, did we get the result that we expected? So we did all this work to say, yeah, this is going to be good, but then we want to validate that. And once we do, then we want to institute that and implement that and make that a permanent thing. So this involves things like mean and averages, standard deviations, which is sigma. That's the term that we use, hence the Six Sigma, 6 standard deviations. We're looking at the range in sample sizes, the difference between the highest and the lowest. What size sample do we take? How confident do we want to be about this? So there, if you go back to some of the statistics you might have had, you get 94% confidence level, 97% or whatever. We're looking at both variable data and attribute data. Variable data is things that we can measure, the quantitative piece of it. Attribute things are things that we look at as a pass fail, good or bad, we look at is like, counting paint drips, or if we're making clothing, we're looking at buttons. If it's supposed to have 6 buttons and it has 6 buttons, that's good. And if it doesn't, then we pull that item out and we make a note that it had too many or too few or whatever. And then actually creating control charts, which are the statistical part of that. And that shows us the graph. It gives us a visual image over time. So what we're looking for here, these are the normal curves if you don't remember them. So we're looking for the shape overall, but we also want the mean to be about the target level. So this blue curve, the bottom one, the lower one, you can see. Maybe you can see it this way. If I do this, you can see that this bluer one is centered really around the target. It's maybe a little bit off, not perfectly centered, but that's what we want. Green one, however, is not around the target, but so that's not a good thing. And these are our specification limits, these lines over here. But the green one is centered, it's higher and it's narrower. So that's better. That means we have a tighter control and less variation around the mean, the average, except that's pretty far off from the target. So what we're trying to do is to get a nice, tall, narrow curve around the target in there. And so that tells us that we have a better process. So statistically speaking, if we go to 1 standard deviation on either side of the mean, then we've covered 68% of the values from a statistical level. If we go to 2 sigmas on each, 2 standard deviations on each side of the mean, then we have 95% of the population. And if we go to 3 sigma on each side of the mean, we've covered 99.7% of the population. So actually, that's a very good place to be. If we can be within 3 sigmas and we have our upper and lower control limits, as well as our upper and lower spec limits outside of that curve, then we're in really good shape. And in this case, that's what we're seeing here with the control limits, which are calculated based on our values. So if we can have 99% of our 99.7% of our values falling in our curve, that means falling within the right place, then that's really good quality. And many processes are just fine running at that. And many processes are okay, actually, if we have 95% of a pass rate. So somewhere between that 95 and 99, a lot of processes are, and a lot of companies are happy to have processes with that. Statistically, though, if we look at this, the 6 sigma actually means 6 standard deviations on each side. It doesn't mean in total those three on each side, 6 standard deviations, which is that 99.73. So when we get out here to the standard deviations that are 6 on each side of the mean, that's where we get to this 3.4 defects per million. So you can see going from 3 sigma to 6 sigma is really not that much of a amount, 99.7 to 99.9999, but it is worlds apart in the context of quality. So that's what we strive for, and there's things that we do want in that kind of level, but other things don't need to be that. And so you need to consider what quality level is needed for you to be and to be accepted and make your customers happy. So for example, we don't drink distilled water. So in bottled water that you might have, you don't really want that 3.4 defects per million, because you'd like that water to include some minerals, some electrolytes and things like that from a natural perspective. Now you can buy water that's infused with things that has things added to it in terms of that, the electrolytes and different minerals and things like that, as well as flavors. But from just a natural perspective, if we all drank distilled water, we'd have a real problem health-wise. So we don't want to do that. That's not a good, healthy thing to do. So we need a little bit of if you would, contamination in that water in terms of the things that are good for us. A little sodium, a little potassium, a little iron, a little this, a little of that, and some other things that are going to be actually good for us and help keep us alive. So we don't need it. If we don't need it, we don't want to keep striving for that, and we don't want to overdo it in that. So here's examples of the control charts. The X bar is the means. So this takes our sample numbers, so sample 1, sample 3, whatever, and we graph that and we calculate our control limits. This happens to be for the range. So we take that sample, whatever our sample was, we take the difference between the highest value and the lowest value, and we plot that, and that's our range chart. And it's usually that we use both of those because they tell us different things. We can also chart things that are for our attribute data. So these two charts are used for variable data. These are used for attribute data. P charts really are a proportion. So you can see that this is like a proportion of defects, percentage, I say. So to remember the P, the proportion or the percentage. And so this says 5%, 1%, 8%. We're in here. We can plot that number, the number of rejects. And then for C charts is the count. So we're counting how many things that we rejected. So back to my example of a shirt with buttons on it, if you rejected it, then you count it, or you take it as a percent and use it in that chart. So there's a couple other charts for you. There's some other tools that you use to ask why 5 times. If you've ever been around a young child, 3 or 4, why? That can be annoying, but in work, when you can say, okay, let's ask this and let's dig into this to try to get to the root cause. Plan, do, check, act, or plan, do, study, act. Those are good models. Kanbans, again, check sheets, different tools. Just in time is a good philosophy to use. That's a very, very lean approach to inventory. So for Lean and Six Sigma, there are, again, white and yellow belts, usually in company programs, things you can do. Green belts, black belts, lots of places to find those. You can take those. Extension colleges often have those. Many companies do that internally. If you're old like me and remember Jack Welch and GE, then he was a big proponent of black belts and green belts and had them all over GE for many years. And then the champions are the ones in the company who actually help identify these projects and say, this is where we need to improve. They provide resources, remove obstacles, and things like that. So what I know for sure is there's a better way to utilize Lean and Six Sigma for any and every business. One of the things companies see when they implement these methodologies is improvements in morale and better results financially. We look at relying on the subject matter experts, which are always already in your company. They're the people closest to the work, and let them target the improvements and use their knowledge and expertise to make things better and then make sure they stick. So if we get out of our boxes and out of our typical thinking, looking at operations from a customer perspective, it's not unusual for customer satisfaction scores to go up, complaints, returns to decrease, and again, all of that saves money. So it's basic financial math. Revenue minus expenses equals profits. And if we reduce waste and reduce cost in the expense part of it, then we're going to be able to improve our profits. So that directly and indirectly improves profitability. Okay, so I've just got another minute left. So begin to incorporate these things. I'm here to help if you understand this, if you want to do this in your business, if you'd like me to go into more depth, I'm available. Start slowly and reach out because I'm happy to help. I'm here to do that kind of thing. And Purple Link's available for you and for your companies. So if you want to do that, you can do callwithjane.com and get to my calendar and immediately be able to reach me and set up a call, and I can talk about more how we can help you. So here's your last chance to get the gift card. So I'm going to count how many people have sent me their emails. All right, let me do my random number generator here. And the winner is going to be Robert Murphy. Are you still here, Robert? If you are, then make sure you send me an email to confirm which email address you'd like me to use for the Amazon gift card. If you have an Amazon account, then I can send you the e-card. And if you do that, then I will send that. If you don't, then I will actually send you the card, but I'll need an address to send that to.
Yes, he's
So
on. He's on.
that's great. Congratulations, Robert. Actually, I see you about 4 times on there. So hopefully there's only one Robert Murphy.
Yeah.
So all of you who sent me your information, you will get today's slides, you will get a gift card for Robert, and then you'll be signed up for our dynamic dialogue subscription. And the next one is going to be May 28th. So it'll be at, I do them at noon here, so they're going to be at 3 your time on the East Coast. And I want to leave you with one thing, and that's to say, continuous improvement is not about the things you do well, because that's what we do for work. Continuous improvement is about removing the things that get in the way of work, the headaches, the things that slow us down. That's what continuous improvement is about. And that comes from Bruce Hamilton, who calls himself the old lean dude, writes a blog to help people understand the Toyota production system and lean and Six Sigma. He's written a lot of different things. He's a very funny guy, as well as being a very talented guy. And so if you want to check it out, you can go to Bruce Hamilton. So thanks again. Sorry I ran over a couple of minutes, but it's been great to be back with people in New York, and always great to work with Kathy. So thanks for your time today and your attention.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Thank you so much. We did get one comment in from Celine. She said that, I don't know if you want to or can share information from other organizations, but she said their university has used, and she put the link in under the Q&A. So if anybody wants to grab a hold of that before we finish for today, they go to this particular training area to certify their students. They said it's a little bit more cost effective than the ASQ. And they always try to make sure that all their students graduate with at least the yellow belt, but they are looking to move it on to the green belt. So just wanted to put that comment out there for everybody. And the name of the site is www.sixsigmacouncil.org. And then you would then
Thanks
go into
for
Six
sharing
Sigma
that, Celine.
training.
That's a great piece of information to have, because I get that from a lot of people. And if that's online, then that's an easy thing to access. So, and ASQ is a good program, but it can be pricey.
Exactly, exactly. Thanks again, everybody. But at this point, I'm going to close out the program. Say thank you, Jane. Thank you, all our attendees, for joining us today, and we'll see you next month.
Take care. Happy summer.